August. Young players in the NBA helping major teams win? I don't think so very often. We'll talk about that. We'll continue our series on who got better in the West. And it's a Friday week wrap-up of your questions on the live edition. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Pow!
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us on Locked On Jazz today. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We are free and available on all platforms, now YouTube at Locked On Jazz, so please subscribe. Plus available on Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get your podcast, Google Podcasts. Thanks very much for tuning in and listening in whatever format is best for you, and all of them are free. All right, today's edition, I want to talk about kind of this ongoing conversation about young players we've been had. I got a great question from someone that says, hey, you're saying young players don't really contribute. Did you expect Donovan? And the answer is no. Like, absolutely not. That's what's been so remarkable about Donovan and, frankly, Luka and Trae Young and these really great players that are superstars have come in the league. And there's no question that the young players that are superstars are coming into this league probably more ready with more international experience. As much as we criticize AAU, for the best players, it means that they've been playing in major platforms against the best players in the country for long extended periods of time and are not scared of the moment. The NBA rule changes, I think, have allowed younger players to have more impact on the game as well. And obviously someone like Luka had played EuroLeague and Euro Championship. So those players are able to have, an incredible impact. I think when you're looking at roster building is really where I'm talking about it. And I did not suspect in any way, shape, or form that one, after Gordon left, that we'd be a playoff team, or two, that Donovan would be able to lead us that way. So no, that was a great question. And particularly a 13th or 14th pick seems absolutely unheard of. The players eventually get there, right? That's like, it's not saying that, well, young players are never going to be good. What you have in this league is this very tight window. And if you're the Lakers, or in theory, the Knicks or Miami, or a major market team, I think you can build your team without young players, thinking you're going to be able to sign free agents the whole way and just stay good the whole time. The rest of us, it gets into this funky little game of, like, clearly, if we're going to pay $40 million of luxury tax as the Utah Jazz this year, we're trying to make this run to win it now. Like, we've got like a 1, 2, 3 year window, depending on what we do with the roster. We're not, re-signing everyone's going to be very difficult over the next few years when you're paying a $40 million luxury tax. And frankly, guys are aging. And so, we've committed to Mike Conley for the next 3 years. We've committed to Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. So that's your core group. And you're going to be fiddling and piecing and trying to figure out. And as Donovan gets a little better, and Rudy gets a little bit better, and Mike's that stable force next to it, we're always going to be good. And we're going to keep trying, right? We're going to keep trying to take our 12, 13, 15, 18, 20% chance to win the West and win the title and see what we can do with it. And so it seems as though the right answer is, well, let's go add young players, get some young players in there and let them have an impact. It's a little bit why I'm much more of a proponent of the young player on their second contract, right? The second draft player that maybe you can discover things from. It's rare. It's, I understand why we didn't do it, but like Ntilikina is a guy I talked about that I thought, maybe in some way he shows some signs and just was in a bad situation in New York. Probably not. Like Emmanuel Mudiay was that guy, didn't work out, didn't even play in the league last year. So, likelihood it's a probably not. It's a little bit also where I am like with Jared Butler. Like, I'm excited. It's a great pick at 40. I'm not, I'll be clear, watching him, I didn't see like lottery pick. I saw really solid, smart basketball player. And when I look at his body at 6'3" with a 6'4" wingspan, I don't see lottery pick like I heard. We got a lottery pick at 40. And I'm never, ever just fundamentally a believer that, like, the minute I think you think you're smarter than everyone else in the room, I think you're bound for disaster. So just that fundamental belief, like, oh, well, we're just a better drafting team than 29 other teams, makes me a little nervous, just kind of in the sense of competition. But let's look at it for a second. This is what I want to talk. Like, let's just look at some games. So Philadelphia against Atlanta. And obviously injuries played a role here, but Atlanta's team, by the time they and DeAndre Hunter is a player that would have been contributing for them in this circumstance, but was injured, would be in his second year. I'm not entirely convinced, right, that he actually makes them a great deal better because of a little bit of what I'm talking about. Kevin Pelton has this great thing about basically the data shows, I'm over-exaggerating it, but the data shows you should redshirt all your draft picks. They don't help you win in their opening year in any way, shape, or form, and they're all better in their second year. Blake Griffin, Nick Collison, guys have done it due to injury, and it's worked out pretty well. All right, so let's take a look at Atlanta. And Atlanta's, was a surprise team that no one expected to get there, and their starting lineup by the time they hit the playoffs was Solomon Hill, veteran, John Collins at that point, in the same range of kind of where in his third or fourth year. So he's young and contributing, deserves some mention, but he's not the first or second year player. Capella, Bogdanovich, Trae Young, second, unbelievable, right? Trae Young, unbelievable year in his third year in the NBA for him to have that season. Again, not a first or second year player, but just amazing. Kevin Huerter in his third year, Danilo Gallinari is probably his 13th, Tony Snell in his 12th, Lou Williams in his 14th. So here's this young upstart Atlanta team. The guys contributing, the young player contributing in the first or second year, it's not there. They don't have a first or second year player contributing on that roster. Trae Young in his third, Kevin Huerter in his third, John Collins, I think, in his third or fourth. It's awesome. And they're young and they've got a group together that they can move forward now that they've re-signed it. But they don't actually have that. Okay. Philadelphia actually had a little bit more of it. Danny Green, Mass veteran, Tobias Harris, veteran, Joel Embiid, 6-7 years at this point, I think. Seth Curry, 6-7 years at this point. Ben Simmons. Thibault would be an exception. Thibault, to his credit, and I believe his second year, was able to contribute in the playoffs for the 76ers. So there you've got one. A very, what you really have there is a unique skill, that he's just an unbelievable defensive player. And Shake Milton in his third year was able to give them a little bit. Otherwise, you've got Korkmaz in his fourth, Seth Curry in his seventh, Ben Simmons in his fourth, Danny Green in his 12th, Dwight Howard's on that roster on his 17th, Tobias Harris in his 10th, Tyrese Maxey, who had these moments in the season every now and then, not really, 5 minutes here or there in a blowout. George Hill ends up giving them 13 minutes in his 8 millionth year. Dwight Howard gives them 13 minutes. That's kind of the reality that I'm talking about here when you look at Philadelphia and Atlanta. And here's these two teams that actually are kind of young and emerging teams. There just aren't a lot of, Tyrese Maxey gives them 5 minutes. Milton gives them a pretty good 14 in one of their wins. But there's not a ton there, right? I think you follow me. The Jazz had none. Mia Oni's playing 8 minutes because Mike Conley's hurt. Okay. And they weren't 4 fouls in 8 minutes. But otherwise we had none. The Clippers against us were playing, again, we're not talking about young players. You're talking about Kawhi Leonard in his 9th year, I think it is at this point, and Marcus Morris in his, I'm just going to make sure I get them all right. Last year you had Kawhi Leonard in his, Reggie Jackson is 10th, Nicholas Batum in his 13th, Zubac in his 5th, Luke Kennard's in his 4th, Marcus Morris in his 10th, Paul George in his 11th, Kawhi Leonard in his 10th, Serge Ibaka wasn't available, was in his 12th, Patrick Beverley's in his 9th, Rajon Rondo was in his 15th, DeMarcus Cousins was in his 10th. There's not, their guy was Terrence Mann. And that, he got us. That's why we tried to make him beat us. Terrence Mann, second round draft pick out of Rhode Island, pretty interesting, or out of Florida State, excuse me. Mom was a coach at Rhode Island, and he gets it done in his second, in his second year. That's pretty darn awesome. You don't see that. Denver, Phoenix, Mikal Bridges. There's the outlier. Can you find a Mikal Bridges? He has become a fabulous, fabulous player. He was in his third year at this point. And they're going to continue to get better because they have that. Crowder, veteran. Ayton now in his 4th year. Booker, veteran in his 5th year. Chris Paul, Cameron Payne, Saric, Cameron Johnson in his 2nd year. There's a guy who did contribute. Torrey Craig, veteran. Okay, pretty. Michael Porter Jr., third year, second year playing in the NBA. Gordon's got many years. Jokic got years. Rivers Campazzo's a 32-year-old rookie. JaMychal Green, Will Barton, Monte Morris now in his fourth year. Paul Millsap. You just aren't seeing those players. You just really are not seeing those players. And if you look at Brooklyn, New York, PJ Tucker, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Brooke Lopez, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Bobby Portis, Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Dante DiVincenzo would have been their younger player, wasn't available. Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, Blake Griffin, Bruce Brown, I think's in his fourth year, Kyrie Irving, Landry Shamet, Nicholas Claxton actually got 18 minutes as a young player. So as you build these rosters and you build these teams, and we're talking about this like Jared Butler's role, and the reason I'm not like sitting here telling you I think Jared Butler's going to matter, or even a Trent Forrest 2-day sign, I think the Trent Forrest sign is super important because he gets you through the regular season. When it gets to it, these aren't the guys. Like, this is what I do like about what Phoenix did last year is Frank Kaminsky, Each-One Moore, Langston Galloway as your bench, and Kaminsky gave him 17 minutes in a finals game. Like, those are the guys that if you have them on the end of your bench, and we've done a little bit of that, right? Like, even if we thought Udoka was ready to go, Hassan Whiteside is probably going to be more playoff ready. Even if we thought Elijah Hughes was ready to go, right? We've got somebody else who's probably a little more playoff ready to fill that spot. If Rudy Gay is going to be able to, Elijah Hughes is not a great example, but if we thought Jarrell Brantley was ready, Rudy Gay is our playoff guy right there. So, as much as we all fall in love with young players and things of that nature, the fact is that filling out the bottom of your roster with veteran players is a little more expensive. It's not a great deal more expensive. And I think it's players that can contribute in the playoffs much more. And it's why you find me as a team, as good as we are, a little less high on, okay, great, we got the 40th pick. We did that. And it's also why I never thought we should have taken our first round pick, right? Like, it's just not someone who in our window of 2 or 3 years is going to give us a lot of contributions. And when you look at our roster and long-term, when we are no longer in our window, we're going bottom back up, right? We're going to do it what we're watching everyone else do. We're going to have to go bottom to back up and try to find our next versions of Donovan and Rudy. Those are scary days, but it's the cycle. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. Just sent somebody else over to Jason. Our good friend Dan Clayton over Salt City Hoops reached out to me the other day and said, hey, what's going on with that? I tweeted it out the other day, but tip of the hat to Salt City Hoops. They've just done great work. I try to credit them every time I steal their stuff, but I steal it a lot. So I think I'd be crediting the whole show. They're doing just great work out of passion. I know the business. I can't imagine they're making a lot of money out of it. So, hopefully they're getting themselves a nice dinner and maybe a little extra something on a vacation, staying in a better hotel room for that work. And it's worth the passion play for them, but they're doing fabulous work. But nonetheless, Murdoch Hyundai is located at 4646 South State Street in Logan and in Linden. And we want to help you out. Murdoch's have been in Utah for over 80 years. Hyundai's an incredible brand. I'm driving the Sonata right now. It's terrific. We own 2 Santa Fe's. I'm in on the brand. I'm in on their ability to deliver a reasonably priced car that drives fabulously with every bell and whistle that I could be paying $30,000 or $40,000 more for and don't need it. So go ahead, take a look yourself. If you're in the market for a car right now, if you're looking Lexus, Mercedes, and all this stuff, take a second and just at least look at the value. If you're looking at all the other Subaru, take a look at the Kona. If you're looking at the Honda Accord, take a look at the Sonata and give me an email at dlock09@gmail.com so I can direct you over and get you in touch with the people who you need to talk to at over at Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street and in Logan and Linden. If you could do me one favor when you email me at dlock09@gmail.com and let me know where you are. We'll take one step out of the process. If you tell me who you are, where you are, we will be able to almost immediately set you up with the right people. I have locked on contact at each location, so that will make it great. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Sweat Block. Doctor created, doctor recommended. If you've got excessive sweating issues or a big event coming up or a high school kid that gets a little embarrassed because at the end of the day, it's getting a little tough over there and no one wants to be embarrassed as a high school kid. It's been a bestseller on Amazon for the past 10 years with over 13,000 reviews, and it is now moving out to the mass market. It is a dry shirt guarantee. If Sweat Block doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. Here's how it works. They come in little wipes, like little tiny wipes, and you go take your shower at the end of the night, you get completely clean and dry, and then you put it on before you go to bed and apply it. The next morning you wake up, wash, go about your day, and you don't worry about sweat anymore, guaranteed. So the night before a big presentation, the night before a major dance or event or something where you think that's the answer right there. Chase, the owner, was telling us a story about how he doesn't have excessive sweating. So he's trying to figure out if this product really works. So he decided to go on a run, do one side, not the other. Absolutely. Some of the guys on Locked On have already gotten some shipments of theirs, and we're on the chat room the other day saying this is amazing. So check it out. It's at Sweatblock. It's Sweatblock antiperspirant wipes. You get 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code Locked On. They're also at Amazon and CVS, but you get 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code Locked On. All right, I want to continue our series on who got better in the West, and look at what teams did and what the moves were and all of those kind of things. Did want to make sure that for those of you who are going to be gambling a little bit this weekend, make sure you go to Locked On Bets to find out the latest things that are taking place. All right, so looking at using the standings from last year, and we can get into more discussions on kind of what I expect this year. I actually think it's going to be incredibly even, is the Denver Nuggets. And so the number one question, obviously, on Denver is what do they do having to play an entire season without Jamal Murray, if in fact it's an entire season? Murray's going to work to get back, but ACLs are becoming kind of 12 to 18 million dollar or 12 to 18 month processes. So I think it's going to be hard to imagine Murray coming back, and that makes them hard. It makes it hard for them. But what did they do? They drafted Rashawn Highland. I just told you what I think of the chances of that. They re-signed Austin Rivers, which to me was a sign they don't really expect Jamal Murray back anymore. They re-signed JaMychal Green for a 2-year, $17 million deal. They did not re-sign Paul Millsap, and they signed Jeff Green to replace Paul Millsap. And Millsap, by the way, is still out there looking for a job in the NBA. We'll see where he ends up. The first thing I would say on them is a little bit the same way I feel about Rudy. Like, whatever they did doesn't matter because they have Jokic. So at 26 years old, in his prime, getting better every year, getting more experienced every year, Jokic is going to be so good next year that they're going to be fine. And that's what you saw. They're not going to – I don't know if I think they were the best team in the West when Jamal was rolling, and they're just coming into their own. I mean, Jokic is 26, Murray's 24, Gordon's 26. They re-signed Will Barton, who's 30. Monte Morris is 26. Michael Porter's 23. And then they've added the veterans, right? So Jeff Green's 35, JaMychal Green's 31, Austin Rivers is 30. They've done a nice job around the fringes here with this team. Did they get better? No. And so I don't think they're a title contender because of the fact that without Jamal Murray, they're just missing that extra little piece. And I think trying to do this for an 82-game schedule is going to be a lot harder than what they did last year, which is, Jamal Murray gets hurt and they win a few games. You get a little momentum. You start to try to believe that you can get this done and do this. And then from there, it gets to be pretty tough, right? That all of a sudden, now you wear out the burden. And so the burden on Jokic, the burden on Michael Porter Jr. to be that second scorer. And I do think they're going to have an assimilation issue when you bring back Jamal Murray, because Michael Porter Jr. is unbelievable. He's probably going to average 25, 26 points a game this year as their number 2 guy, and they have to build that team. And then how does Jamal Murray work his back in because Michael Porter Jr. is not going to be quite ready to give that up. So that injury to Murray is just a killer for whether or not we really think they got better. And my quick answer would be, I don't think they got worse, in the sense Millsap was really aging. JaMychal Green picks up a little bit of that. Jeff Green probably picks up of that if it's an engaged Jeff Green. It's interesting to me that Brooklyn didn't bring Jeff Green back, unless it was just that they didn't want to pay him $5 million. So Jeff Green went and got the money. But I get a little nervous when that veteran guy goes and signs that last contract for the money and might not be as engaged about being where he is. There's a specific contract in the NBA in this offseason. I literally think the player signed it to get the money so that he could get bought out at the trade deadline and go to a team he wants to go to, and then get the playoff run at the end, but get it with $3 or $4 million more in his pocket than he had otherwise. Can't really blame him, but those would make me a little concerned. So that's my quick take on Denver. And did teams in the West get better? Probably not. I don't know that they'll miss JaMychal Green or JaVale McGee, but they're just still a little thin up front. Their backup center to Jokic, I guess, is JaMychal Green, which is, will be interesting. He signed a 2-year, $17 million deal. So they're paying him thinking he's definitely going to be their backup center. Austin Rivers then couples, this is where the Aaron Gordon's got to play and score a little bit more because they've lost the Gary Harris's and that. So I just think it's going to be a bigger burden for them as the season goes on. Our next one is the Clippers. They were the 4th seed. And again, we're into injuries here with Kawhi. He resigns. And I still think they're good. Like they're a 50-win team as well. They got Reggie Jackson back. That was probably the biggest question. They decided they're deep into the tax. They paid a 2-year, $21 million deal for Jackson and got him to stay. They drafted nicely. I like both their picks, but I again, you know my viewpoint on that. I'm going to stay consistent. And then they just signed Kawhi. So this is really the exact same team as they had a year ago. They'd certainly love to get out from under $14 million and Patrick Beverley. Figure out Luke Kennard's role, figure out whether Serge Ibaka can actually play again. They signed Justice Winslow. I'm not moved by it. He hasn't been good anywhere. I don't know why he'd be good now. He's on his 3rd contract. He's inefficient. He's a great athlete. He can't shoot. He's not a great athlete. He's a great body is what he is. So I'm pretty unsold there. So it's just a question of like, does Paul George at 31 have an MVP season while Kawhi Leonard is out? And can they roll through it? I think they're probably a 48 to 51 win team without Kawhi Leonard for an entire year. Again, this is the same thing. I look at Denver and LA the exact same way, which is the fact that with the length, they both got struck by these injuries in a disappointing manner. And now they get this, they have to do it for 82 games. And I think it's just a wildly more difficult prospect of what they're trying to get done. So those are our 2 teams in the West today. We'll continue this series next week, Monday. Ron Boone will join me throughout the week, Monday as well. We're going to move to 3 days a week here at some point, for probably about 4 or 5 weeks before we get right into the season. I might stretch it out when I get the Jones to do an extra show here or there and have some fun people on, do some crossovers with people across the division, check in with their team. I think you guys like those when we talk to other Locked On hosts. So we'll do some of that kind of stuff as well. All right, questions time. Open up, get to the chat room going on our live show on YouTube. We only do our live shows on YouTube right now. We're not doing them on Twitch or Instagram or Facebook or Periscope. So make sure you go subscribe to the Locked On Jazz YouTube channel, get notified when we go live. We do some of the shows live, some of them on tape, just kind of plays. I'll be on the road next week, so I'm going to try to piece together interviews and segments, and they'll probably all be debuting. Those shows are fun, though. When we debut them as live, you can get in the chat room and talk with other Locked On fans and have a good time from this. All right, we'll get to the chat room question. Someone says, not true. Donovan was good from day one. Oh, boy, how we forget a few things along the way. It was quick. And it was early, but it was not day one. And there were some real days of leaving the arena with major concern about what was going on. We'll dig back into that as well. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Congratulations to Built Bar. What an incredible act yesterday as they gave all of the walk-ons at BYU a scholarship in part of their name, image, likeness, college basketball or college football rules now. What a great act. You know what I actually kind of love most about this act? And I saw DJ tweeting this out today. Like, how much does this help BYU? Probably none. It probably doesn't win BYU many football games. What it does is changes the lives of 35 kids that are working just as hard as everyone else. Now, what gets interesting here in a competitive balance over the years is if Built commits to this for a long, long time, suddenly BYU's playing with like 90 scholarships and everybody else is playing with 60. Now that suddenly gets super interesting to the impact on college football. They may have just opened Pandora's box with this incredibly generous act. So it's kind of worth talking about. Let's keep an eye on that one as on the fun stuff. But anyway, Built's got great stuff going on. Appreciate their community involvement has just been terrific. They have 9 main core flavors, and then they often drop out the fun one. 2 of them are back right now, which is coconut, almond, and peanut butter brownie. They're back. You want to get those. They run out. Otherwise, it's orange, strawberry, coconut, mint brownie, salted caramel, raspberry, double chocolate, cookies, and cream, and cherry berries. I saw a buddy of mine yesterday over at the golf course, Rick Shand, and he was saying, I accidentally bought the wrong ones. I was like, what's Locke talking about? That I found Built Bar in a grocery store. I got them, and I was like, well, have you ordered them on the site? And he's like, No, I was like, come on, order them on the site. Use the promo code Locked On. You get 15% off, and it's an awesome customer service experience. So make sure you get that done. If you're a nut eater, which I'm not, but I was last night, so I ended the night in the emergency room, but that's a different story. I wasn't intentionally. Built Bar, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond are available for you right now. So go grab those as well as all the other great flavors. Promo code's LOCK15, and the macros are amazing. 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 6 fiber, and 17 protein. All right, if you're going to play this weekend, what are you going to do at betonline.ag? BetOnline.ag, live sports betting, sports gambling going on. You can play all Major League Baseball. Giants win again yesterday. I'm fully in. I'm actually become a Giants fan based on the podcast Locked On Giants. I listen every day. They're into a series with the Rockies right now. Madison Bumgarner's on the mound and a 1.5 point favorite. I told you yesterday the Giants were like not favored with their ace on the mound. You just had to jump all over that. Come on. Yankees have gotten hot. The Field of Dreams game was so cool last night. Field of Dreams changed my life. I'll tell you that story some other time. It's all at betonline.ag. You get 50% off with our 50% bonus at Locked On. Also, the race books are open if you're into the horses. They have daily great things going on there. I love betting the ponies, and there's all sorts of tracks that are open right now and rolling from Arlington Park to Golden Gate Fields to Louisiana Downs. Saratoga's up and running. Their first one runs in 36 minutes. That is a great way to spend a day. It's all at betonline.ag, promo code Locked On. All right, let's get to your questions. So the first question comes in from Crypto somebody other, Super Bowl. Not true. Donovan was good from day one. Let's remember a few things. Donovan's opening. So Rodney Hood gets sick on opening night. Donovan has to start against Denver. Donovan goes 3 of 11. The next night he goes 1 for 7. The next night he goes 1 for 7. The next night he goes 7 for 20. The next night he goes 1 for 7. So it's early. We're 5 games into the season. And this kid who's suddenly become our franchise is shooting 25% from the field and 17% from 3. If you want to go back to what is so great about Donovan Mitchell, this to me is it. Like, this is where this kid is just remarkable and special, is that he opens the season with a disaster. 25% shooting, 17% from 3, 9 points a game. He then has a good game against the Lakers. He goes 9 of 16. He follows it with a 3 of 8. He then has 2 kind of good games against Portland, goes 9 of 21 and 9 of 20. But he follows it against Houston with a 6 of 13. You're like, okay, maybe he's coming. We go to Philadelphia for the big matchup with Ben Simmons and everything, and he goes 3 of 21. And then we go to Miami, and they crush him, and he goes 5 of 14. We're 12 games into the season. Donovan Mitchell is shooting 35% from the floor and 32% from 3. We're 12 games in. He started 4 of them. We've pulled him from the starting lineup. We're now kind of protecting him a little bit. And then all of a sudden, this is where Donovan is just a different bird. He gets put back into the starting lineup, I'm assuming due to an injury. And then kind of capping it off, he in his next 13 games, he gets a bit better. He goes 47% from the field, 42% from 3, taking 7 a game and making 21 and scoring 21 points a game. Like, you're like, oh, there's like something happening here from that kind of transition. You do not see rookies very often doing that, going from one side of this to the next. It's really something truly remarkable to see that take place, moving from one step to the other. Then he actually kind of slumps a little bit, gets beat up, broken down. And then we have the Phoenix 40-point explosion, the great game against New Orleans his rookie year when he breaks out and he's going. Like, if you take him, start him kind of on February, he gets beat up, doesn't play a little bit. We kind of give him a rest, and then he comes out of the All-Star break in February of that year, and from the second half of the season just gets outstanding. And so, his turn is definitely quicker, and it's not to the mold of what I was talking about earlier of young players not having an impact. But his final 30 games are him averaging 22 points, shooting 42 and 32. Not brilliant, frankly. Pretty inefficient by that point when the burdens on him and the scouting reports came. But I think some people have forgotten those opening 10 games of the season and how difficult those really were. Let's go to Romelu. If the Jazz stay healthy, they're the favorites in the West. I don't like to put too big expectations on the team, but they were great last season and we got better. I think the Lakers will be the favorite in the West because everyone likes that. I don't see it. We'll run the points gain numbers here at some point. I think Phoenix probably deserves to be the favorite in the West too. I really believe right now, and we'll see if points gain tells me something different when I put it together. my feeling right now is that we're going to have 8 teams that are between 55 and 50 wins. Like they're just going to be bunched. It doesn't happen that way. Things happen otherwise, but it's hard for me to see much more. Do you know much about the TV extension and will they be streaming locally? I do not. I think it's a great question. You know, it'd be great would be to have like president of the Jazz, Jim Olsen, on Locked On for a Q&A and see whether he would be willing to do that, or somebody with the Jazz Q&A on all these kind of topics. Red Hart says we wish we could have Brandon Ingram. He'd be perfect for the Jazz. It's interesting. I wonder why. Ingram's an interesting star. He's averaging 20 points a game. I don't think New Orleans is going to give him up. At some point, they might decide he's not the perfect fit next to Zion, but he seems like he's pretty good. He's still, some people kind of wonder where he is in his progression of how much his numbers are helping wins and how much he's are able to do this. Randy Chipman says that works at BYU, but not many other schools because of cost of tuition on Built Bar. Most of these schools have an endowment that's so large they can do whatever they want, frankly. So that's it. Hit the like button, everyone. That helps get the stream pushed out to more than the people watching. We can do better than that. Thank you, Bryce. Do hit the like button. Do hit let people know that it's all right. Please promote the YouTube side. It's a great way for discovery. And it means that when you go to the barbecue, more people know what they're talking about the Jazz. And that's better for you because there's nothing worse than going to the summer barbecue after talking Jazz with that guy who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast in the Utah Jazz, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Tell your smart speaker to play the most, or smart device, that could be your phone, play the most recent episode of Podcast